So, I love doing this. Today I'll give you my views on Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's her autobiography, quite detailed. She talks about her life, a large part covers her childhood. For someone like me who's not from the USA and has just got no idea, it's very interesting. She's from the south side of Chicago and she talks a lot about black people problems, which again, to me is a relatively new subject, so so that's another thing. So you can learn a lot, and my favorite part of the book is when she introduces Barack to the picture. The first time that she mentions him is hilarious. On the other hand, the book is quite revealing, and I know that we live in this age of oversharing and all that, but I mean, there are just some things that I didn't expect her to say. And I know that this is rough, but for the ex-first lady, it's a little inappropriate. Just a tad. As for good points in the book, there's a time when Michelle starts questioning her career as a lawyer. Also mentions her brother, who was at the time the vice president of some bank and drove a Porsche and wore tailored suits and all that. Also mentions her father, who was sick but preferred to say he was fine 100% of the time. And all that is very real, very rough, but in a good sense. I like that part of the book very much. The parts where she talks about Barack can feel a bit like a romance book and a bit overdone. But, you know, people have the right to express whatever they feel with whatever words they deem suitable. So, yeah. What I liked the most was the story about the petting zoo arranged for the Obamas one day. And so read that one and watch out for the ending because it's a good one. Also, one of the funniest bits were the ones describing meetings with the Queen of England. That was really funny, I thought. Alright, and before we end this, I wanted to give you some quotes from the book. There's not that many, I just highlighted a few passages as I was reading it. So let's take a look at that. The first passage that I highlighted goes like this. Losing my dad exacerbated my sense that there was no time to sit around and ponder how my life should go. My father was just 55 when he died. Suzanne, Michelle Obama's friend, had been 26. The lesson there was simple. Life is short and not to be wasted. If I died, I didn't want people remembering me for the stacks of legal briefs I'd written or the corporate trademarks I'd helped defend. I felt certain that I had something more to offer the world. It was time to make a move. So this talks about the time when she was questioning her career as a lawyer, like I said. And I think this is a very smart passage. The next one that I have is very short, but it goes like this. Barack was relieved to be done with law school, eager to get out of the abstract realm of academia and into work that felt more engaging and real. And this is something that I have always tried to show other people, that most often our universities, our schools are way too different from real life, meaning when I walked into a university, I wasn't at university for a very long time myself, but when I walked in there and then I walked out, I could feel that the outside world was so separate from where I've just been. It was like those two worlds weren't even connected. And that's the saddest thing about our education system right now, I think. This next passage talks about the time when Michelle failed an exam for lawyers and for people that worked as lawyers and wanted to further themselves in that field. That's what it was. And she says, I was ashamed, sure that I'd let down every person who'd ever taught, encouraged, or employed me. I wasn't used to blundering. If anything, I generally overdid things, especially when it came to preparing for a big moment or test. But this one I'd let slip by. I think now that it was a byproduct of the disinterest I'd felt all through law school, burned out as I was on being a student and bored by subjects that struck me as esoteric and far removed from real life. There you go. Okay, and here's another passage. Here, Michelle talks about her mom, and it goes like this. I was old enough now to realize that all the hours she gave to me and Craig, her brother, were hours she didn't spend on herself. My considerable blessings in life were now causing a kind of psychic whiplash. I've been raised to be confident and see no limits, to believe I could go after and get absolutely anything I wanted. And I think I highlighted this because that's about the opposite of what I was raised to believe and the kind of people that I was surrounded with. It was always the opposite for me. So I had to build up my confidence from not just from the ground up, but from like below zero. Anyway, so like I said, it was a tough experience, and I had to, and I still keep learning with new experiences in life that every step of the way you need more self confidence. You think that you have the self confidence needed to do this or that, and then you encounter a new task, or you meet new people, or you have a new situation, and it turns out that you need even more self confidence. So it just and the question is, if you need more and more every time, where do you take it from? So so that's what life is all about, really. And here she talks about Barack. She says, since I'd known him, it seemed to me that Barack had always had his eyes on some far off horizon, on his notion of the world as it should be. Just for once, I wanted him to be content with life as it was. I didn't understand how he could look at Sasha and Malia, now 5 and 8, with their pigtailed hair and giggly exuberance, and feel any other way. It hurt me sometimes to think that he did. So yeah, as you can see, this book is kind of, well, it's her autobiography, and she's very open in it, and she talks about a lot of things, which, well, is a good thing. I mean, there are a couple of things that I wouldn't mention, but yeah. Now, this little passage talks about an interesting and a very bad situation that occurs in politics and in our system and in democracies all over the world. And it says, plenty of black folks couldn't bring themselves to believe that my husband had a real chance of winning. Many had yet to believe that a black man could win in predominantly white areas, which meant they'd often go for the safer bet, the next best thing. And this is something that really scares me about the democratic process and everything. Because we have a situation where people often vote for candidates and for, people that they think are likely to win, that they think enough people will vote for, so that, because sometimes there's a situation where there are two major players, and then there are tons of other players that are not that major and that are just on the bottom, and people don't vote for the ones that they like because they believe that they're wasting their vote, because that person is never going to win anyway. And instead, they cast their vote for one of the big ones, the one that is, like she said, the next best thing. So that is something that we really need to start thinking about when trying to design a new social system, because that is a big problem with democracy. It's something that people don't talk about a lot, but they should. Here's another part of the book that I highlighted, and it goes like this. I understood that I was more active than many candidates' spouses, which made me more of a target for attacks. My instinct was to hit back, to speak up against the lies and unfair generalizations, or to have Barack make some comment. But his campaign team kept telling me that it was better not to respond, to march forward and simply take the hits. This is just politics, was always the mantra. As if we could do nothing about it, as if we'd all moved to a new city on a new planet called politics, where none of the normal rules applied. Very interesting passage, I think you'd agree. And then at some point in the book she says, at public events I focused on making personal connections with the people I met in small groups and in crowds of thousands, in backstage chats and hurried rope lines. When voters got to see me as a person, they understood that the caricatures were untrue. I've learned that it's harder to hate up close. And this is something that I agree with 100%. A lot of times in life, it's really easy to hate on someone without knowing them, without ever having met them, without sitting down with them one-on-one or in a larger group of people. It's so much easier. But then when you meet someone and you spend some time with them, you often realize that, well, they're usually not as bad as you thought they would be, and they're much more human than you imagined them to be. And they're much more similar to you, I guess. And so, yeah, so this is a really interesting passage in terms of, our world now and social media and just internet as a whole. If you sit down with people, you just find out that they have their reasons for their actions, and that it's not just random, and they are following usually they are following some train of thought. They have something in their heads. They don't just do things just like that. 3 more quotes. This one says, the last bit of work he did, usually at some hour past midnight, she talks about Barack, was to read letters from American citizens. Since the start of his presidency, Barack had asked his correspondence staff to include 10 letters or messages from constituents inside his briefing book, selected from the roughly, pay attention to this, 15,000 letters and emails that poured in daily. He read each one carefully, not the 15,000, but the 10, jotting responses in the margins so that a staffer could prepare a reply or forward a concern on to a cabinet secretary. He read letters from soldiers, from prison inmates, from cancer patients struggling to pay healthcare premiums, and from people who'd lost their homes to foreclosure, from gay people who hoped to be able to legally marry, and from Republicans who felt he was ruining the country. From moms, grandfathers, and young children, he read letters from people who appreciated what he did, and from others who wanted to let him know that he was an idiot. I mean, I support this. I support that he read 10 letters every day, even if it was 2 o'clock or whatever. He just made sure to do that after everything else was done. And all of that is great, but what strikes me the most is that there were 15,000 letters and emails pouring in every single day. Now, in a world where everything functions the way that it should, every single one of those letters should have been responded to, not by Barack, of course, but by a team of people, by someone, and not just responded to, but action should be taken, because usually if people do that much, if they write a letter or even an email, but if people found ways to, do this, and they went through the trouble and they did that, then they usually have a reason for that. They usually have some kind of problem that they can't deal with, or something else that is going on. They usually have a serious reason for reaching out to the president. So like I said, again, in an ideal world, all those letters should have been responded to, and some sort of action should be executed as well. Now listen to this passage. This is crazy to me. It says, 3 times over the course of the fall of 2011, Barack proposed bills that would create thousands of jobs for Americans, in part by giving states money to hire more teachers and first responders. 3 times the Republicans blocked them, never even allowing a vote. The single most important thing we want to achieve, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, I don't know how to read that, had declared to a reporter a year earlier, laying out his party's goals, is for President Obama to be a one-term president. It was that simple. The Republican Congress was devoted to Barack's failure above all else. It seemed they weren't prioritizing the governance of the country or the fact that people needed jobs. Their own power came first. I found it demoralizing, infuriating, sometimes crushing. Well, I find it demoralizing and, what was the other thing? Infuriating as well. Yeah, I don't think I even need to comment on that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't, in a sane world, this sort of thing would never happen. Never in a million years. Because you have things that you need to fix. You have stuff that you need to do. You can't just vote or make decisions because you want somebody to fail, because you don't like someone, because that's the thing that everyone's doing, or any of those reasons. And then here's the last quote. It says, I grew up with a disabled dad in a too small house with not much money and in a starting to fail neighborhood. And I also grew up surrounded by love and music in a diverse city in a country where an education can take you far. I had nothing or I had everything. It depends on which way you want to tell it. Again, I don't think I need to comment on this. I think this is just smart enough in itself. Alright, and it appears that is all that I've prepared for today's video. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Yeah, in general, I recommend the book. You have to know that you'll be reading the autobiography of Michelle Obama. That's what this book is. Like, don't expect to read about, I don't know, government secrets or something, or just, because some people go for books like this just because it's, oh my god, it's the president, or it's the wife of the president, or it's, ooh, but it's not. It's just her autobiography. So you learn a lot, but also there won't be anything, anything crazy, anything conspiracy-like, anything, none of that. So just don't expect to find that. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in 2 weeks with another book review, I believe. So, yeah. Bye!